Let's maybe turn on a couple lights so I can see a couple of people, if that's okay. Whoever has a light switch around. That would be so nice. Any questions or concerns or deep-seated resentments now? What? Players? Oh, God. Ah! That was a setup that I could not follow through on. Thanks, guys. Oh, there you are. Hey, everybody. Thanks. That's the end of that. That's the end. It's all gonna end. Yeah? Everything's gonna, it's all gonna end. This is the end of that, and it's all gonna end sometime. My grandparents, anybody had a grandparent? Yeah. My grandparents, it's all gonna end, okay? My grandparents on both sides are gone. My dad's gone. My mom looks 30. But she's on her way out. Just like all of you. The days go by so fast, you know? It's weird. It's really weird. My sister, her name is Bree, she has 4 children, under 5. She's an insane person. I'm playing shows with projectors, you know? We are living 2 very different lives. They're dying. I mean, they're fine, you know. We have the opportunity to live ourselves to death. And instead, so serious. So serious. I am so serious. It's a real serious room right now, you know? Forgive us our seriousness. But we're gonna die. I don't have any idea what's on the other side. And neither do you. Or, if you do, keep it to yourself. Those don't you want to know where you're going to go billboards that are in South Georgia? I know Chris has seen those. We're pretty far north right now, but there's some don't you know where you want to go billboards that are in South Georgia, and there are zombie Jesus billboards in northern Florida.
Oh my gosh.
There's zombie Jesuses just on a bunch of billboards, and it's terrifying. And it's terrified me for long enough. Not because I don't want to know, but if you can imagine it, there was just always something in their tone that seemed to presuppose that I was wrong. I'm sure I am. I'm not sure you're right. Keep me always, Mary Oliver writes, from those that have the answers. I want to stand beside her, astonished. I do not want to spend another second of my life, this one that is going to end, fighting about who's got the truth nailed down. Did I love you well? Did I love you well? I can think of some people I haven't, for sure. Mostly they're the people I love the most. I can think of a couple of ideas that I had nailed lovers to until blood and water poured from their wounds. I I can see their eyes and their faces and their longings at different times, fighting, making love. Taking little bites of apples until they are their own person, filled with forgiveness, because they know now, hey, we're dying. We're trying. We are rubbing dirt and spit into one another's eyes until even you shine like the sun to me. Until even I shine like the sun to you. And in New Mexico, has anyone out here ever been in New Mexico? Tight. Good. Breaking Bad. You've all been to New Mexico if you've watched Breaking Bad, yeah? Oh, thank you. Thank you. We'll talk about it outside, you know what I'm saying. There's this place in New Mexico in the Pecos Mountains that's like, 2.5 hours north of Albuquerque, where I'm from originally. And it's called Holy Ghost Campground. I've camped there for a lot of years over the course of my life. And a couple of years back, I went there with my friends Preston and Laurel. That's their names. I'm not going to tell you anything else about that. And Francis, the dog, in the back. And Pink, their dog. And we spent the time talking, like you do when you're camping. If you've camped before. You've talked and camped before, right? It's great. And we sat around the fire with no acoustic guitars in sight, with not a single one, just totally uninterrupted talkie time. And talked about God and faith and Christianity and weddings and crowd surfing, which is what I did at my wedding. Highly recommended. If anybody's working on getting hitched, I think that you should crowd surf at your reception. Actually, I think it'd be real tight if you crowd surfed at the ceremony, but that's not what I did. I like the idea of going back to like 2008 when everybody would just plank everywhere. Do you guys remember planking? I like the idea of like being carried down the aisle by your, in a weird plank. You're both carried down the aisle by your wedding parties, and then they set you down and then fan out, That'd be nice. That's not what I did. But we did crowd surf at the reception. So we talked about crowd surfing, we talked about disappointment, which happens, the collapsing of dreams, which happens, and the black holes and big bangs that we are. And we had shooting star contests. Like who's going to see one first? Me, I said, staring straight at Preston. He's a constellation. I see meteorites pass through his atmosphere and burn with all of the complexity of a campfire. I know that it's a struggle to feel the warmth of the suns inside of him sometimes. When the wind blows too hard on the flame, or too much kindling, or too many pine needles, or too many platitudes, or too much crowbarring of some other person's faith threatens to choke the flow of oxygen to our star gaze. It doesn't mean that God's not present. Sometimes, it's just appropriate to stop talking about it. Stop forcing conversations. Stop clogging possibilities with torn out pages of how-tos, suffocating as inerrant, insofar as it suits you, like a prospectus about how you, too, even you, can learn to see everything from the perspective of my upper hand. Yay! As spent 3 days at Holy Ghost Campground with no cell service. May as well have been 3 days in a tomb. Scared a couple of friends who didn't know I left into showing up at my doorstep, afraid that maybe I had camped myself to death. And so I know that I had loved. And they may have wept like Mary Magdalene when the grave released my texts. All I know is that Christ is still alive inside of people, no matter how blasphemous we get. Listen. If you're watching this, if I can dig myself out from underneath the fear of pressing publish, if I can learn to risk myself for the sake of something that I still love, is there space for me? Is the seed dead yet? Is the burial process really something that I can trust? Then take my hand. We are solar systems. There are light years in your eyes. I have seen visions and I have dreamed dreams. I have grown into a man old enough to watch young men do the same thing. I have heard the prophecies of daughters, voices ablaze with a song to sing. I have been the recipient of miracles. I have watched the future walk away from me. And hoped that she would not turn into a pillar of salt, no matter how badly I wanted to be looked back at. I wanted to catch every crystal. We are not flavorless, but I wish that I had not taken the taste for granted. You are the light of the world. You're the light. You are. And I am. And there will be ghosts. We'll find them in the corners that we forgot to appreciate. Hear them asserting themselves from the rafters on the quiet nights, presenting their absence on Christmas morning when we find ourselves celebrating the breath of God with an exhale. Remember when we returned to dust, haunted by shoulds and should have nots, and confused as to how we completely lost ourselves in the process of trying to do the right thing. It's like preaching grace from some stage whose mouthpieces don't practice it. Not because we don't want to. They don't want to. I'm tired of that narrative, too. Who doesn't want to? Who doesn't want to? But because we don't know how to receive or rest in it ourselves. You've got to cloud projection with self-assurance and hierarchy if mercy starts to sound like death instead of incarnating itself to hallow the gates of hell. And I've been working on my morning pages, praying prayers between drinks, bunkered down inside of a constant civil war between my heart and my head over the words enough and more, and a body that is trapped and waving a white flag like enough. Enough. I can't take much more of this. Christ the brokenhearted. Christ the forced. Christ the undefended. Christ the divorced. Christ the cosmic. Christ the ghost. Christ the comforter. Christ the stranger inside of your own home. Christ the weakness. Christ the unheard. Christ the co-suffering servant of the underserved. Christ the husband. Christ the wife. Christ the indistinguishable breath of all of life. Christ the weakness. Christ the dove. Christ, the clockless, unmechanical timelessness of love. Christ, the real and right now and here. Right now and right here. The only time and place in which eternity draws near. I fell in love with you as a child, and then I watched you disappear, and then, like scales falling off of my eyes, I realized, y'all, that the monsters are so much smaller than the shadows that I couldn't help but fear. The hindsight doesn't rewind the years the foxes ran rampant in the garden, spoiling vineyards. Does it? I never quite knew how to dance on top of graves. Big surprise. Not a lot of grapes, you know? Their dad always seemed to keep his hand wrapped around my ankle. Maybe I never knew what it really meant to ferment. Did we underestimate how much new wine our skins could take before they burst? Over is a word dependent upon a timepiece of which love knows nothing. And I tried not to watch the clock at Holy Ghost. That shooting star contest. Hope might just be the heaviest thing that we will ever have to carry. So don't sink. Don't sink. And that, ladies and gentlemen, people of the audience, is how you make a couple of poems that don't have anything to do with the story, a part of the story. Thank you. Very much. Thank you to Bridge and Chris and all of the people. I'm sure that more than just the people's names that I have were a part of this evening. So thank you very much for being willing to host this tour, and for everybody else for coming and participating and sitting in the dark for such a long time, you know, like a bunch of weirdos. I think we all have things in the back. Some people trade them for money, you know? So if anybody wants to do that, we'll try and see how it goes. But you can say hi to Frank if you feel like it. He's good. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.